Shabbat Shalom, everyone. If we could all find a place for ourselves to sit, we'll open up our Siddur to page 128 and 129. A little bit of Shabbat music to help get us in the mood to welcome in this beautiful Shabbat evening. Near the top of page 128. Ma yafeh hayom, Shabbat Shalom. 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 Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. If you turn to the next page, 129, almost at the bottom of the page, we just sang a song of Shabbat that comes from the Ashkenazi tradition. And since we're in the key of D, we'll sing a song from the Sephardic tradition, also in the key of D, for those of you who are musicians and care about things like that. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Oti le'ol me'ad beino uveini. Oti le'ol me'ad beino uveini. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Oti le'ol me'ad beino uveini. Oti le'ol me'ad beino uveini. You can turn back just a few pages to page 120 in your Siddur. And as we light our Shabbat candles, we bring in the light of Shabbat. People often ask, we have this thing that we do. We kind of wave our hands 3 times like this and cover our eyes. Someone just asked me again this week. I explain this every once in a while. But someone just asked me the question this week, why do we do this? The answer is this, that we have 3 ideas. In the morning, we say a blessing, Asher Yatzar, which is a blessing for our bodies. We say a blessing in the morning called Elohai Nishama. It's a blessing for our souls. And we say a blessing in the morning called La'asok B'divrei Torah. It's a blessing for our minds. So our bodies, our souls, and our minds, the 3 elements that make us who we are. And so the idea is that we bring the light of Shabbat into our soul, into our body, and into our mind. And then we cover our eyes, and we say the blessing, which we'll say in just a moment. And then we uncover our eyes. And why do we cover our eyes? It's a little more complicated. It's this. We have a blessing that's called the bracha asiyah. Everybody say bracha asiyah with me. Bracha asiyah. It means a blessing of doing. You say the blessing, and then you do the thing. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, for eating bread, right? And then after you say it, you eat bread. Borei pri hagafen, creator of the fruit of the vine, for the wine, right? So you say the blessing and then you drink the wine. Lahadlik ner shel Shabbat, you say the blessing and then you light the candles. But we have a little problem, because the Talmud tells us that when we light the Shabbat candles, that starts Shabbat, and once Shabbat starts, one of the 39 malachot, the 39 things that you're not allowed to do, is to kindle a fire. And so if you say the blessing, once the blessing is said, that's the moment that for you, Shabbat starts. If I say the blessing 5 minutes later, that's the moment for me that Shabbat starts. But once you say the blessing, Shabbat starts, and you can't kindle a fire. So what do? You light the candles, you cover your eyes, you say the blessing, you open your eyes to light the fire, and it's already lit. It's a Shabbat miracle. Now, on the one hand, it might seem a little bit silly on the surface. But if you go below the surface, it's really something quite beautiful. It teaches us that every single Shabbat begins with a miracle. Isn't that a beautiful thought? Every single Shabbat begins with a miracle. And so, if you'd like to engage in bringing the light into your body, your soul, and your mind, and if you'd like to cover your eyes and see the Shabbat miracle, we'll do that now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushan b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת. And we continue as we turn in our Siddur to page number 130. See, sometimes I think it's also a Shabbat miracle when it's raining outside and people show up. That's the other thing that I think is sometimes a Shabbat miracle. But on page 130, we continue as we welcome in Shabbat and we leave the rest of the week behind, and we use these psalms of praise as we say goodbye to the week and hello to the Shabbat. Lechu neranina ladonai, let us sing joyfully to God. Psalm 95, page 130. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina ladonai. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina ladonai. Naria, Naria, Litzur Yishenu, Nekadma Fana Bitoda. Naria, Naria, Litzur Yishenu, Bismirot Naria Lo. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina ladonai. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina ladonai. On page 131 from Psalm 96, the bottom paragraph that's on your page, Yismechu hashamayim, the heavens will be glad, V'tagel haaretz, and the land will rejoice, Yiram hayam, and the sea will sing joyfully as well, Umelo'o, and all that fills them, the land, the sky, the sea, and all the creatures in them, all of God's creation, praising God's creation. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umelo. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umelo. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. On page 132, from Psalm 97, near the bottom of the page, we see these words, Or zaru ala tzaddik, light is sown for the righteous, ul yishrei lev simcha, and for the straightforward of heart, happiness. Those who are righteous and those who are straightforward of heart will find light and happiness in their world. Page 132. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Uyishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Uyishrei lev simcha. Lai 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 lai. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. On page 133 from Psalm 98, we'll read together in English at the bottom of the page. A psalm. Sing to Adonai a new song, for God has worked wonders. God's right hand, God's holy arm has won God victory. Adonai has manifested God's victory, has displayed God's triumph in the sight of the nations. God was mindful of God's steadfast love and faithfulness toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth beheld the victory of our God. Raise a shout to Adonai, all the earth. Break into joyous songs of praise. We sing one of those joyous songs of praise, page 135 from Psalm 99. The last three lines of the psalm. It's a psalm that talks about creation. It talks about God's ruling the world, and it says, "Romemu Adonai Eloheinu." We sing joyfully and exalt God's name. "V'hishtachavu lahar kodsho," and we bow down, we prostrate ourselves before God. Lahar kodsho, at God's holy mountain. Ki kadosh Adonai, because God is holy, and therefore we strive to be holy as well. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a little while when we talk about our Torah portion this week. But in the moment, we sing joyfully of trying to be holy people. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Psalm 95, 96, 97, 98, and 99. So, of course, next comes 29. I know some of you thought it might be 100. Those would be the mathematicians in the world, but not the Kabbalists in the world. Because the Kabbalists in the world counted 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 29. It has nothing to do with the numbers. It has to do with the themes. Because 95 through 99 are psalms of praise. Psalm 100 is a psalm of thanksgiving. Therefore, it doesn't fit in the pattern. So the Kabbalists who added this section to the service 500-ish years ago, instead of going to 100, the next one, they looked for another psalm of praise so that there would be 6, one for each day of the week before Shabbat. And Psalm 29 fit the bill. So that's why Psalm 29 comes after Psalm 99. It's not mathematical, it's thematic. We read together in English and then we'll sing a little bit in Hebrew. A psalm of David. Ascribe to Adonai, O divine beings. Ascribe to Adonai glory and strength. Ascribe to Adonai the glory of God's name. Bow down to Adonai, majestic in holiness. The voice of Adonai is over the waters. The God of glory thunders, Adonai over the mighty waters. The voice of Adonai is power. The voice of Adonai is majesty. The voice of Adonai breaks cedars. Adonai shatters the cedars of Lebanon. God makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Sirion like a young wild ox. The voice of Adonai kindles flames of fire. The voice of Adonai convulses the wilderness. Adonai convulses the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of Adonai causes hinds to calve and strips forests bare. While in God's temple all say, glory. Adonai sat enthroned at the flood. Adonai sits enthroned, sovereign forever. May Adonai grant strength to God's people. May Adonai bestow on God's people well-being. Those last 2 lines of the English, they are also the last 2 lines of the Hebrew. Lai 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 lai. Adonai oz le'amo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Adonai oz le'amo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Lai 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 lai. So we turn to page 138 and 139. We welcome in Shabbat with Lecha Dodi, as is our custom here. I'm saying this because I see several new faces in the room today. Very happy to have several new faces in the room today. We sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. You might ask, why do we only sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9? No, go ahead. You might ask. I'm so glad you asked that question. The answer is this. Just like about the Psalms, it's thematic. When Rabbi Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz, to whom this poem is attributed, wrote this poem 500-ish years ago, he was one of the early Kabbalists in the city of Tzfat. And the early Kabbalists were messianists. They were messianic. Not that messianic thing that we talk about in modern times here that's kind of the Jews for Jesus thing. Not that messianic. Not that thing. That's a very different thing. These guys were Jews, rabbis, Talmudic scholars, who really believed that the Messiah was literally coming maybe today, maybe Sunday, maybe Monday. Certainly not any later than Tuesday. I mean, the Messiah coming was imminent. And so a lot of the liturgy that they wrote in their time had messianic themes in it. Again, not that other modern day messianic thing, not that. Jewish messianic ideas, that the Jewish Messiah was coming any moment now. This was something that they believed with every core ounce of their being. And so when they would write poetry and liturgy and scholarship, they wrote about this idea a lot. The early Reformed Jews, who by today's standard, by the way, if you met them, you'd say, oh, these are all Orthodox rabbis. They said, we don't believe in the idea of a Messiah. We reject that idea. We reject the idea of a Messiah. We believe in the idea of a messianic age, that the Messiah will not be a person, the Messiah will be a time period of eternal peace. In his poem, Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz wrote in verses 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8 hints of messianism. The Reform movement, who rejected that messianism, said, we like the Shabbat parts of his poem. That's verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. But we reject the messianist sections of his poem. That's verses 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. And so among the Reform movement, even to this day, the Reform movement sings verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. There's the rare Reform synagogue that sings all 9 verses. But as we follow the Reform tradition on Friday evenings here at Temple Shalom, we'll sing those 4 verses tonight. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'letchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki hi mekor habracha, Merosh mikedem nesucha, Sof ma'aseh b'machshevat chila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Verse number 5. Hitoreri, hitoreri, Ki va'oreh kumi ori, uri, uri, Shir daberi, Kivod Adonai alayich nihila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. We rise, we face the door to welcome in the Shabbat bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam besimcha utzola, Toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Before you're seated, I caught a couple of you. As we welcome in the Shabbat bride, we welcome each other. So turn to the people to your left, to your right, in front of you, behind you, and wish everybody Shabbat Shalom. And for those of you who are joining us on YouTube, and those of you who are joining us on templeshalom.com, Shabbat Shalom to all of you as well. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. All righty, well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So happy to have all of you here. For those of you who are watching us on YouTube or templeshalom.com and you decided not to come because of the rain, you missed all of these beautiful people who are here, and we miss you, but we're glad that you're with us online. We continue on page 140 with Psalm 92, a psalm of Shabbat, Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat. Let us sing a song of Shabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. It is good to give thanks to God, especially on Shabbat. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Lahagid baboker chasdecha, ve'emunatecha balilot, alei asor ve'aleina ve'lalei higayon bechinor. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Ki simachtani Adonai b'folecha, b'maaseh yadecha aranin. Ma gadlu maasecha Adonai me'od, amku machshevotecha. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. As we make our way from our Kabalat Shabbat into our Ma'ariv service, we turn to page 144. For Chatzi Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, v'yalmad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala, ba'agala, uv'izman kariv yimeru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach, ve'alam ulam me'almaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Vishtabach, Vitpar, Vitruma, Vinase, Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shemi, Dikudisha, Barichu, Le'ela, Minchop, Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechemata, Damihiron, Be'alma, V'imeru, Amen. As we turn to page 146, we rise for Baruch Hu as we call ourselves to prayer. Lai 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 the lai 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 lai. Lai the lai 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 lai. Lai the lai 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 lai. Lai the lai 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 lai. Lai the lai 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 lai. Lai the lai 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 lai. Lai the lai 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 lai. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. HaMevorach. HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. We can all be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv arvim v'chokhmah poteach shorim u'vidvuna meshana eitim u'machalif et hazmanim u'mesader et hakochavim b'mishmorotehem barakia kertzono borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or u'ma'avir yom u'ma'avir u'ma'avir ben yom v'layla Adonai tzvot shemo el chai v'kayam tamidim lo chaleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv arvim. We'll read together in English. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are a creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzevaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. Page 150. Prayer giving thanks for the gift of Torah. We say Ahavat Olam. With a love of this world and eternal love, you have loved the house of Israel, giving us your Torah with its mitzvot, its commandments, its chukim, its laws, its mishpatim, its statutes. You taught them to us so that we might make them a pathway for each and every day. As the prayer says, Ki hem chayenu, because the words of your Torah are our life. Ve'orech yameinu, and the words of Torah are the length of our days. The top of page 150. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadita, Otanu limadita. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochenu v'kumenu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem nehege yomam v'layla nehege yomam v'layla v'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael ohev amo Yisrael. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. As we turn to page 152 and 153, I want to take a moment before we say the words of Shema to talk to you about a person. I want to talk about an Israeli rock star. It'll make sense in a minute, I promise. His name, Tzvika Pick, one of Israel's greatest songwriters. When Israel, for the third time, won the Eurovision Song Competition in the early 2000s, he wrote the song. It was called Diva. Dana International was the winner, by the way, that year. Very, very controversial in the year that Dana International won the song leading competition, because Dana was born David. And Dana was the first transgender person to ever win the Eurovision competition when it was still kind of in the realm of being this very controversial thing. And Tzvika Pick wrote the song. He also wrote a song one year for the winner from the Netherlands. And he also wrote a song for Eurovision for the winner from Germany one year. And he wrote songs for some of Israel's greatest singers. He also wrote songs for himself. In the late 70s, 3 years in a row, he won the Israeli equivalent of the Grammy for Best Male Rock Vocalist. His daughter, one of his daughters, I should say, one of his daughters is a singer-songwriter in her own right. He's written several songs with her that became #1 hits in Israel. His other daughter, she's married. You probably never heard of her husband's name, Quentin, some movie-making guy, Tarantino. You probably never heard of him. He made a couple of movies, this Quentin Tarantino guy. His other daughter's married to him. So why do I want to tell you in the middle of a Friday night Shabbat service about Tzvika Pick? Well, the reason is that at the age of 72, just this week, Tzvika Pick passed away. And the funeral was only a few days ago. And I thought we might tonight sing a melody that Tzvika Pick wrote. Among all of those great melodies that he wrote for all of those Israeli rock stars, that he wrote for those winners and some second and third place finishers in the Eurovision Song Competition, he also wrote this piece of music that appeared on his biggest selling rock and roll album of his entire career, which came out in 1978. And the lyrics for this particular melody are what you see on page 152 and 153. The melody that Tzvika Pick wrote for Shema will probably be familiar to many of you because we've sung this melody here before. And it's sung in almost every Jewish summer camp across the United States of America. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. A little inspiration for our Shema from the man who in Israel was called Melech HaShirah, the king of song, who passed away just a few days ago in the land of Israel. We continue with V'ahavta at the top of page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha Hayom alevavecha, vishinantam levanecha, vidibarta bam, veshivtecha b'veitecha, uvlechtecha vaderech, uvshochbecha uvkumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, vahayu letotafot beinenecha, Uchtavtam amezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tiskeruhu vasitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim le'oechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzei et yedchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Emet. We read the poetic translation of these words in the middle of page 155. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work. Whether you are tired or you are rested, let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai your God. Page 158. As God led us out of Egypt, as the Torah tells us, with a yad chazakah, a strong hand, and a zroa nituya, an outstretched arm, we came to the Sea of Reeds, and we needed a miracle, because behind us were the Egyptians, in front of us was water, death by sword or death by drowning, not really a great choice. But there were the small crowd who had faith, began to walk into the water, led by, the Midrash teaches us, a guy by the name of Nachshon. And Nachshon began to repeat these words as he walked into the water, the Midrash tells us. And soon all of the Israelites were singing these words. Who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped in the world? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in your splendor, the one who does wondrous things? Michamocha 158. Michamocha Ba'elim Adonai, Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot, O seifele, Mi kamocha Ba'elim Adonai, Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, Malchutecha Rauvanecha Bokeyayam Difni Moshe Umiriam Ze'eli Anu ve'omru Adonai Yimloch le'olam va'ed Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh V'ne'amar kifad Adonai Yaakov Ugolo mi'ad chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Go'al Yisrael. Praised are you, Adonai, the Redeemer of Israel. Page 160. Lie us down, Adonai our God, in peace, and cause us to rise again tomorrow to life. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu v'shalom, v'ha'amidenu shomreinu b'chayim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu v'shalom, v'ha'amidenu shomreinu b'chayim. The three lines indented near the bottom of the prayer. Ushmor tzeitenu, uvoinu, l'chaim u'shalom, me'ata ve'ad olam. la 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 la. We read together in the middle of 161. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 162. The people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. It's a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth. And on the seventh day, Shabbat vayinafash, God ceased from everything, and God refreshed God's soul. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Beni uvein b'nei Yisrael Oti leolam, oti leolam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. U'veyom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. As we turn to page 164, we rise. As we come to our Amidah, we'll sing the Zimun, the meditation at the beginning, together. We'll join together in the first three paragraphs and then finish our Amidah silently. For those some newer faces in the room, so a little moment of explanation. The way that this particular Siddur was written by its particular editors, in the Amidah section, you will find the traditional words of the Amidah with a couple of the Reform movement adjustments. On the even numbered pages in the Hebrew and the Hebrew transliterated in English, and a fairly faithful translation right underneath it. On the odd numbered pages, you will find a poetic rendition, not of the translation of the prayer, but on the thematic material of the prayer. You can feel free to use the Hebrew, the transliteration, the translation, the poetry on the pages of the Siddur, or if you find it within yourself to find the poetry in your own hearts, your own mind, your own soul, you can use those words as well. After the first few pages, we'll continue. The Amidah ends on page 180 and 181, so we'll continue silently. And when you've finished with your silent Amidah, please be seated and we'll join back together then. Page 164. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agid teilatecha Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chaste Avot v'Imahot, U'mevi Geula Livnei V'nehem, L'man Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Be'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayi HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Nichamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit, Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Atah L'chayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechaye HaKol, Atah Kadosh, V'shimcha Kadosh, U'kadoshim b'chol yom Yahallelu Chasela, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. We continue silently. Find these words in the middle of page 180. You Luratzon Imrefi Vegion Libi Lifanecha Adonai Suri V'goali Adonai Suri V'goali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart, may they all be acceptable unto you, Adonai, my rock and my Redeemer. Adonai, my rock and my Redeemer. We turn our thoughts to those who are in need of healing. We turn our Siddur to page 371. We come to a prayer of Mishaberach L'Cholim, a prayer for healing of the sick. We ask God to bring refuah shlema to Brian Zabel, Reuven ben Sipora, Carrie Susser, Moshe ben Avraham, Avram ben Meir, Judy Bauman, Avram ben Udul, Ellen McIntosh, John Redmond Palmer, William Redmond Palmer, Susan Perry, Paltiela bat Mordechai Vavasha, Harriet Neal, John Sheck, Faye Green, Howard Chook, Joel Weiss, Cheryl Miller, Charney Oppenheim, and Jessica Sidman. For those of you who are at home joining us on YouTube or templeshalom.com, if you have names you'd like to add for healing, you can either type them into the chat function on the platform that you're using, or you can say their names out loud. For those of us here, if we have any other names for healing, we'll start over on this side of the room if anybody has names for healing. Judy. Thank you. Any others on this side of the room? Thank you. Any others? On this side of the room, names, any names for healing? Thank you. Any others? We also ask healing for all those who suffer from the COVID-19 pandemic. For all those we've named and for all those in need, these words in the middle of page 371. Misheberach Avotenu Mikor habracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mikor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We've been doing a bit of learning throughout our service, and so just a short little bit of learning for us at the Devar Torah this evening. We read Parshat Akev this week. It's in the middle of the book of Deuteronomy, and it talks about there's a lot of different pieces that are in this week's story. But in the triennial cycle, which we read here at Temple Shalom, the first words in our triennial cycle this year of Parshat Akev are words that kind of feels like a summary. I know Moses, have been going on for a long time. I mean, he started this speech like 3 weeks ago, and we're still reading it in the Torah, and we're going to be reading it for a few more weeks yet to come. It's a long speech. But at a few moments along the way, he kind of gives us a few summaries. And one of those is at the beginning of the triennial reading of today. And he says this. He says, "And now, Israel, what does the eternal, your God, demand of you? Only this, to revere the eternal, your God, to walk only in divine paths, to love and to serve the eternal, your God, with all your heart and all your soul, keeping the eternal's commandments and laws which I enjoin upon you today for your good." End of sentence. So my long speech, Moses kind of says, my long speech sort of sums up here, at least part one that I just finished. Then I'm going to start part two. But part one, let me sum it up this way. Be in awe of God. God's amazing. When you walk down the path of life, be holy and love God, because God gave you these holy ways. And follow the laws that I gave you. And then things will be good for you. That's it. Notice it doesn't say, make sure you pronounce every letter and vowel in the prayers properly. Notice it doesn't say, make sure that the goat that you bring for the sacrifice next week is the absolutely perfect goat that's ever been brought before God on the altar. No, it doesn't say any of that. Be in awe of what God does. Love God. Follow the commandments that are about your relationship between you and God and you and other people. And all will be good. I don't know about you, but it doesn't always seem to work out that way. If you're a good person, things don't always work out well. And well, pick any newspaper or any news station for stories about not so good people who are very successful and things go very well for them. Well, how does that all work? Because it seems backwards of what God is telling us here. There was a great scholar a few hundred years ago in the mid-1700s called the Maggid of Mezrich. He was a student of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. He had several students himself, one of whom was the founder of the Satmar Hasidim and one who was the founder of Chabad. But the Maggid of Mezrich was kind of the middle guy, and he took the ideas of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, and codified them and put them together so that his students would go off and start these Hasidic dynasties. And he said, when you do a mitzvah, what is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is a seed. I mean, mitzvah means commandment, and some people sometimes translate it as a good deed, but it's a seed. It's a seed for something that comes afterwards. In the Talmud it says, mitzvah goreret mitzvah. A mitzvah brings about another mitzvah. Which, of course, on the other end of that, says that an avera goreret avera. A sin brings around another sin. And so if we do a mitzvah, it brings around a mitzvah. And the Maggid of Mezrich says, what is a mitzvah? It's a seed. And those seeds go up to God. And God plants them in the Garden of Eden and waters them. And they grow into trees. So that every time you do a mitzvah, you plant your own paradise. It's a beautiful thought, isn't it? It doesn't mean that because you do a mitzvah, everything's going to go well for you right at this very moment. But if you do a mitzvah, and I do a mitzvah, and you do a mitzvah, and you do a mitzvah, and you do a mitzvah, we plant enough seeds that the trees grow to create that beautiful paradise. And what happens when things go wrong? Well, we collect those too. In the Midrash, we learn about this idea that we not only had the complete tablets in the ark, but the Talmud tells us, you can look it up later, it's Brachot, page 8b, it's great nighttime reading. It'll put you right to sleep. Brachot 8b tells us that not only were the tablets that Moses brought down from the mountain, the second complete ones inside the ark, but the broken ones were in the ark also. Because not only should we revere the complete tablets that came from God, but we should revere the broken ones. Not only should we cherish when we do a mitzvah, but we should cherish when we do a sin. Now, I know that sounds strange leading up to the High Holy Days, which are coming up in just about 5 weeks. Note to self, think about high holidays. But we should cherish every mitzvah because it brings about another mitzvah. And we should cherish every sin because it provides us with the opportunity to learn how not to bring about another sin. And so inside the ark were the complete tablets, but also the broken ones. Because the complete tablets came out of the broken tablets, just like our mitzvot, the good deeds that we do when we follow the commandments, that comes out of the moments when we are broken as well. And so we need to cherish the moments when we're broken, and we need to cherish the moments when we come out of that brokenness. And when we do, when we come out of that brokenness, we find more seeds. And we send them up to God, and God plants them, and waters them, and grows them into a bigger Garden of Eden, so that each one of us plants our own paradise, as the Maggid of Mezrich teaches us. In the year to come, which begins only about 5 weeks from now, may we all be blessed with a few less averot, a few less sins, and a few more mitzvot, a few more commandments, and a few more good deeds. May we all be blessed with the opportunity to create seeds that go up to the heavens, so that God plants more seeds and more trees grow, and may we see the beauty of the paradise that we all create. Shabbat Shalom. If you'll turn in your Siddur to page 586, we'll rise for Aleinu. It's the bottom paragraph on page 586. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula liyotzeh hebreshi, shelo asanu kugoyeh ha'aratzot, velo samanu kimishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahen, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech, Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Notei Shamayim ve'yoser haaretz, u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim mima'a, u'shchinatu zo, v'govei meheromi, hu Eloheinu einod, emet malkeinu efes zulato, kakatuv b'torato, yadata yom v'hashivota elevavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim mima'al ve'al haaretz mitachat ein od, ein od, ein od, the middle of 590. Ki ha-malchut shelcha hi u'lamad timloch bechavod, kakatuv b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, v'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol ha'aretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, u'shemo echad. We can all be seated. In our yard sites this week, we recall the memories of Leo Rubinow, Amy Kumis, Jeannie Chase, Sylvia Simon, Anna Friedman, Danielle Leventhal, Dina Rosenzweig, Ellen Berman, Julius Susser, Lois Funel, Chester Wingfield, Helen Slosky, Isabel Casado, Margaret Silver, Pearl Green, Estelle Black, Maury Obadov, Stanley Gordon, Walter Lubran, Eduardo Gabrielov, and Stephen Kaufman. We recall the memories of all those who have died in the COVID-19 pandemic. Do we have any other yard sites that anyone is observing this week? Thank you. Any others? Yehu zichronam levracha, may their memories be an eternal blessing. We ask mourners to rise and those whose custom it is to rise alongside them. As we turn in our Siddur to page 598, and in their memory we sanctify God's name. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'amei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudusha richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, de'amiran ve'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, huyaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. We can all be seated before we bring our service to a close. I'd like to invite David Weiss from our board of directors to share a few announcements with us of some upcoming stuff.
Thank you, Rabbi, for this great service, and it's great to see everybody here. It's wonderful, especially on a rainy night. So there are a few events. So there are a few events coming up. One of them is a choir for the high holidays, right? Ellie is leading, right? Yeah. And if you're interested in that, I would talk to Ellie, since she's right there. They're starting rehearsals. Tuesday at 7. Let's see. There's going to be a 50th anniversary gala, the 50th anniversary of the synagogue's Legacy Ball, Saturday, September 10th, starting at 6:30. There's going to be a band. It's going to be fantastic, so I hope you guys register for that. It's going to be wonderful, and I hear it's cocktail attire, which is great. And Back to Shul is coming up soon. So for those of you like my family that has kids, there's going to be a breakfast on Sunday, August 28th. It's a bagel breakfast starting at 9 a.m., so come and schmooze. And you RSVP to the temple office, which I should do too. They're needed by the 25th. Let's see, what else? Make sure you update the directory online, because that's the stuff they're going to use for all the printed material for the ball. There are memorial book forms available in the foyer and on the High Holidays schedule. You're going to need to order your etrog and lulav soon. So talk to Elena about that. Go with things coming up fast. And if you know any temple members who are ill or hospitalized, please let us know so the rabbi can reach out, or a member of the board. That's really important. If you're suffering from a loss, please contact the temple office. And of course, if you'd like to sponsor an oneg, talk to Elena. And wonderful to see you all. Shabbat Shalom. Any other? Judy, you have something else?
So we have an outreach meeting now, and our first one is a bill to Habitat for Humanity. A landowner has donated part of this development.
You know what, Judy? So the people at home can hear you too. I'm going to give you a microphone. You got to hold it up close so it doesn't have a big range.
Okay.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay, so we now have an outreach program, and our first build project is with Habitat for Humanity. The first build date is September 11th, 12:30 to 4:30. Of course, everything is supervised by Habitat. You show up with your water, your gloves, your hat, whatever you're wearing. Children over 16 and 17-year-olds have to be with an adult. 18-year-olds do not, and adults, and everyone is encouraged to participate. If you have not worked with Habitat, they've been doing this for 30 years, and they know what they're doing. They're very safe and they're very careful, and it's a very exciting project because they're actually building they're building a neighborhood. It's not one house, it's like 30 houses. They have enough land for 30. So we would love to have everybody get started on this. We have the next Sunday, Habitat at the other Restore, not the one downtown, but the one farther out north and east. They are having an event. It is for 12-year-olds and up, and I have seen what they're going to do, and it's incredible. And they are going to take stuff that has come out of the Habitat store, and they will teach everyone who attends, to create these items. There's 3 of them, and they are stunning and amazing, and they will be used to sell to create more money for Habitat materials. So that is on the 18th on Sunday, and we would love to have a big turnout, big representation from Temple Shalom. If you have any questions, you can call me, Judy Karnick, or Roberta Huttner, and please help us get this outreach program with Habitat going. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, this is the second house of the Interfaith Build program that's being done, and we're jumping in now with our group, and thank you to Judy and Roberta for getting us connected over there. Also, just a couple of other quick things for all of you to know. On High Holidays, we're going to have information for all of you about our next Temple Shalom trip to Israel. It's leaving on June 16th, 2023. June 14th, 2023. That's, if you come on the 16th, the plane will have already left and you'll be at the Denver airport by yourself. But June 14th to June 26th, information will be available at High Holidays. It's our next trip. We did one in 2019. It was amazing. If you want to join us, more information at that point in time, so you can join us for that. And also a couple of other upcoming things on another event on Sunday, the 11th of September. There's a Pikes Peak Interfaith Coalition is doing a interfaith dialogue, and it's an ongoing program every few months about introduction to different religions and their holiday cycles. The next one coming up on September 11th is Judaism, and the people who will be speaking will be me and Rabbi Aya Pillsbury from Temple Bay Torah. The two of us are doing it together to talk about the Jewish holiday cycle, so if you want to join us for that. And then additionally, one other thing, on September 9th, for those of you who missed us last Friday night when we had our service at Guard to the Gods, our Shabbat in the Park, it was so great and wonderful and well attended. we decided to do it again. So Friday night, September 9th, the second Friday night of September, we will be at Garden of the Gods for same thing, 5:30 p.m. Bring your picnic dinner. Service at 6:30. If you've never been to Shabbat at Garden of the Gods, I'm not sure you've actually really ever celebrated Shabbat. I don't know. I mean, it's so amazing to be there, and we have lots of people in the room who've been to a Shabbat service there, and it's just an amazing place. In the Talmud, it says that when God created the world, there were 10 portions of beauty in the world. And I know I'm going to mess this quote up intentionally. It said that Jerusalem was given 9 out of those 10 portions of beauty. The other one was divided, 9/10 of it were given to Garden of the Gods and 1/10 to the rest of the world. I might have made up a little part of that quote from the Talmud. I'll let you guess which part that was. But page 625, we'll close our service with Adon Olam, and then we'll make ourselves a little kiddush and a little motzi in the back of the room. A little Sephardic inspired Adon Olam, page 625. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, Terem Kol, Titzini B'ra, Litnaso, V'chefzo Kol, Azai Melech, Shemonika, Ve'acharei, Kivot HaKol, Levado, Yimloch Noram, Hu Haya, Hu Hoveh, Hu Yihye, B'tifara, Lai 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 Lai, Lai 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 Lai, Lai 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 Lai, Lai 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 Lai, Lai 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 Lai, Lai 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 Lai. La 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 והוא אחד ואין שני להמשיל לו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרה והוא אלי וחי גואלי צור חבלי בעת צרה הוא ניסי ומנוסתי מנת כוסי ביום אקח לי 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 La 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 בידו עקיד רוחי בעת אישן והיראה ועם רוחי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא יראה לי 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 La 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 Shabbat Shalom, everyone. To those of you with us online, we'll say Erev Tov and Laila Tov to all of you. For the rest of you, please join us in the back for Kiddush and Motzi. And if you're new and we haven't met you yet, please find me, please find David, and find everybody else. There's Ellie also. Find the other people in the room and say hi and Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. La 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 la